$1.27 million. That is the amount that people think they need to retire for today. Imagine 20, 30 years from now. That number is probably going to be 5 million due to the cost of inflation. And I'm sure 30 years ago, people would probably tell you $250,000. They'll be fine. 60%. That is the amount of people that are living here don't have an emergency saving funds. I'm talking about $1,000 or $2,000 saved up just in case something happens tomorrow. They could just be like, all right, I'll be okay. 32%. That is the amount of people that have their estate planned. Meaning if they were to die tomorrow, they know where everything is going to be delegated to, whether that's a combination of beneficiaries, wills, and trusts that are in play. Because what you do is throw away all that life of earning all these things back to the state, to the government, instead of it passing down to your family. And this is where the wealth transfer actually happens. This is where the next generation can pick up from where we left off and amplify what we have done. You do not need to be a millionaire in order for you to build wealth. Do not even to make six figures to build wealth. You don't need to even be earning $50,000 to build wealth. It's all a principle that you got to set aside for yourself. Believe it or not, there are people that probably make $5 million a year, and you're probably doing much better than they are because they don't have this habit of keeping up what they're bringing in higher than what they're spending. And because of that, they're in this constant cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. Could you imagine making $5 million and you're living paycheck to paycheck? Okay, the first thing you have to do is actually put together some type of budget. Figure out how much do you bring in. If I bring in $1,000 a month, this is the max I'm allowed to spend across everything. The goal should be to save at least 25% of that. If you can't get to 25, that's okay. You could start at 5%. Then you work your way to 10, then 15, then 20. But your goal is to get that number to at least 25%. Now, get your rent. Figure out what your rent is. I know this is unrealistic, but let's say your rent is $300. You should try to get your rent to be 30%. It should be no more than half. And if you're on a mortgage, I would say to still make that the target, but with a mortgage it's different because you're building equity. So you could push that to the 50 percentile. Many of us have cars these days because we got to get around. For those of us that don't need car, that lives in city areas with the trains, the buses, rely more on that. That is going to save you more money. You only need a car if your job requires you to travel that far. Don't get a car just to get a car to be fancy. I'm telling you right now, it's okay to suck it up. And if you are buying a car, get a hoopty. It's okay. Make sure it's affordable. In this use case, we bring in $1,000 a month. That car should cost us no more than $100 a month. And I'm talking about the car payment. You still got gas. You still got the insurance, etc. that you got to pay for. But really try to keep that low as much as possible. 10% was car payment. 30% was cost of rental. So we're at like, let's say $450. Next thing you have is your bills. You got your cell phone, electricity, and all that stuff. All that should come out to be about another 50%. I'll say we're getting to the 60% mark. So we're at $600 now. And the last thing, you want to make sure you have your leisures. You need entertainment. As human beings, we can't just live a life where we're just straight up working and not enjoying ourselves. We got to be able to enjoy ourselves, watch a movie, do something. It relaxes our mind. Do we need TV? No. A lot of successful people that don't watch TV, and they're right. Whatever that form of entertainment is for you, whether it's sport, gym membership, or doing some activities, do that. Allocate some budget towards that because you actually need that for your mental creativity to continue to keep going. Dedicating time, I always say this, is towards the scriptures. Whether you believe it or not, the Bible has a lot of good source in it when it comes to living your life. How should you maneuver? How do you deal with this situation? How do you deal with this person? Wisdom is something that you cannot get from this world. I feel that is a power that's inside of the Bible. When the Holy Spirit reveals itself inside of these words, when you read them, you're going to see things beyond a physical eye. You're going to see things more of a spiritual sense. Now, let's say all in, we're at $750 when it comes to all of our costs. Now we have this $250 that we can set aside in order for us to actually save. So let's say we did bump it up to $900. We were at $900 and we were starting off at $100 a month. Do you want to know what you can do with $100 a month? If you were buying Bitcoin in its low end, when it was like 10, 15,000, and you were buying that on a monthly basis, you know how much you would have had? Let's say you bought it around 2022 when it was at its low and you kept on buying it on a monthly basis. And then Bitcoin went all the way to $100,000. That is like 10x the value. So if you look at that $3,000 that you had set aside, that would actually been $30,000. This is where I mean, it's pretty powerful. If you actually do these investments, keep buying things recurrently, your $100 can go a long way. And you know what you could have did with that $30,000? That is a down payment for a home, for you to start building more wealth. And this is where the cycle continues. You also have the SP 500 ETFs that you can purchase. Vanguard has it. QQQ has it. These different ETFs and mutual funds, if you bought it similar, when it's low, you keep putting money towards it, eventually it piles up. Even if you didn't have 30,000, let's say it was about 10,000, it 3x from its original value, you could still use that as a down payment towards some type of home. That is one of the next things you got to be looking into. And I'm not talking about buying a home for yourself, but buying some type of investment property, not for the sake you're going to rent out the whole thing, but do this house hack where you're living in one unit and renting out the others. And that takes some discipline, because just because you have only the down payment, you should also have an extra set amount of reserves, like an extra $10,000, just in case something happens. And the way to get there on both sides, so let's say you can only put aside $100 in money that you get from your job in savings. There's also something called the 401k or the 403b, depending on what you work, the type of jobs that you do. If you work for the government and the school systems, you're probably going to have the 403b. But if you work for commercial side companies, you're probably going to have the 401k. So if you max out, let's say you do bring $1,000 a month after taxes, right? That's how much you net. I would assume you're probably earning like $1,300 a month. Out of that, if you maximize that and put like 20% away towards that 401k, so let's say $200, you're left with $1,100 that is taxable. The amount that you would have had after all taxes were paid would probably be like $900. Let's say now you only had $100 that you were able to squeeze, plus the $200 that you had inside of your retirement account. Now you have $300 working for you. And the great thing about the 401k or the 403b is you can use up to half of it in order for you to do a down payment for a purchase. I did that. At the time, I had one retirement account. I took about $20,000 from it in order for me to down pay my first real estate primary residence, which I lived in part of it and I rented part of it, and created this house hack. Over time, the property appreciated, the rental price appreciated faster than the cost of the home, because insurance went up crazy the past couple of years. So has property taxes around 2021. With rental prices going up, you're able to upkeep in that capacity. It's still an expensive thing because you have to think about all the repairs that you got to do. But all the major repairs like the long pipes, the electricity, those things are one-offs that you do that should last you 50 to 100 years. They're expensive, don't get me wrong. But once you get them done, you're able to concentrate on more smaller stuff. So let's say your 401k grew to about $12,000 and the money that you were saving after taxes, it grew to about $10,000. So your down payment, let's say it's $10,000. You could use half of the $12,000 from the retirement account, and you need another $4,000. So out of the $10,000, you take $4,000. That leaves you with $6,000 remaining in your regular account. And you could do that for the down payment. You could put your closing costs all inside of this, so you're not spending an extra dollar. The only thing that you're spending more on is probably the inspection for the property. That is out of your pocket, as well as the appraisal price. That also comes out of your pocket. But some lenders let you do that as part of the closing. So you buy this home now, you rent part of it, and you're living in the other. The goal is to keep your costs the same. The fact that you got the rental income, you should still find a rent where you're only covering $300. And I know these numbers are unrealistic for the urban areas, New York City, California. This is probably realistic for nowhere in the United States right now. I don't know no rent that's like $300. Maybe that was way back 15 years ago. As you start growing wealth inside of the home, doing these repairs, you get a tax deduction for just having that rental side. You get your property taxes deducted for the rental side as well as your personal side. The homeowner's insurance, you get half of it deducted towards the rental side. Now on your personal side, it depends on the president that's in charge. They may let you write that off or not. And if you have PMI, which most likely if you did the $10,000 option, you probably did that in FHA loan, so you probably have to pay that. Depending on the president, you get to write it off or not. Repairs that you did, you get to write that off. Utilities that you paid that was part of the rental side, you get to write that off. All these things that you did not get when you were just renting, you get to write all these things off. So now when you're doing your tax refund, you get a bigger refund amount. On top of that, you could take that money, recycle it, keep investing it over and over. And your home is appraising. 5-year runs down the line, the home value, let's say, goes from $100,000 to like $200,000. You could actually now, since you pay down within those 5 years, let's say 20% of the principal, you have $80,000 in balance left on your mortgage, and your home value is $200,000. Now you can use 75% of the total value of the home, 80% actually. So out of the $200,000, the banks will look at $160,000 that you can play with the equity. So 160 from the 80 of remainder that you have on the mortgage gives you 80,000 of equity that you can use to take out and play with. Now you could take that 80,000, you could buy another property, rent, cycle, and repeat. Whenever you do equity loans, it shouldn't be for you to go live lavishly. You have to spend money to make more money. If you're not doing that, that's the mentality that you gotta have when it comes to these wealth building hacks. Anytime you're taking a loan for something, credit card, whatever it is, it gotta be to make more money. If you're doing it to just live lavishly, then that's a problem. You gotta set some budget to live, of course, but every sacrifice that you're making for any type of loan should be more geared towards that. And you're going to see your wealth is just going to accelerate. The home process, people think just because you make a couple hundred or you at a loss because you're renting part of it, people think that you're not building wealth that way. You got to be making more money. Remember, the homes has 3 factors to it. 1, you get to deduct all these expenses around the home. That's 1. 2, you get rental income, which should offset your actual living costs. And 3, you build equity inside of the home, which you can leverage over and over to actually build wealth. So if you have that working for you and you continue this recurring investment inside of the accounts, you continue contributing towards your 401k, then you are all right. Believe me, within 5-year period, you're going to notice the difference if you have all 3 of these mechanisms working for you. And you don't have to be this crazy stock investor, day trader at all. You could literally buy ETFs. You could literally buy large caps of grayscale Bitcoin. You could literally buy just Bitcoin. If you're buying it when it drops low, of course, not when it's high. I think at the 100,000 mark, you could still do recurring buying. You want to be careful. Maybe if you were doing $100, you could do $50 in Bitcoin and $50 elsewhere. Over time, it's going to rebalance itself and you're going to see you're going to be up top regardless. I've seen it happen with people that's done that and it worked quite a bit for them where they're making 5-6 times whatever money that they actually put in. So I hope you found all this insightful. If you're just starting off, again, you do not need to be making 100,000. You do not need to be a millionaire. You do not need to make 50,000. You could start off with $10,000 of income, whatever you make. I really wish when I was earning $70 a week, someone told me that, and I was able to allocate $30 of that. That goes a long way. Do you know Google used to cost $6, and before they split, the stock was at $1,000 and change. So imagine that $6 that you kept on buying of Google, even if you were earning like $100 a week, it would have turned to something that was quite substantial. And that's the power of building wealth, buying assets, holding on to it for quite a bit of a long time. I'm not talking about day trading, but buying assets, whether stocks, real estate, whatever you can get your hands on that you believe in, and holding on to it for a good amount of time, it really blooms over time to grow to something that you can leverage to continue this cycle of building wealth. Put your estates together, make sure you plan or at least a will. Have beneficiaries for all your banking accounts. Have will in place. You can get that done for free. Have it notarized. You just need 2 witnesses. Depending on your state, it might be 1. So that way something is in place in case something happens to you. The next level to that is the trust, which is more complicated. You got to get attorneys involved. But the will is simpler, cheaper. You could use freewill.com to actually draft it. And that's how you hack the wealth building system. So peace and love. Trust in Jesus. Have an amazing one. Hustle, 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 step.